Iran is tonight denying reports that armed Kurdish militants are crossing into the country from Iraq. It follows reports that Iranian Kurdish militia have been consulting with the US in recent days about whether and how to attack Iranian security forces. A coalition of groups based on the Iran-Iraq border in the semi-autonomous region of Iraqi Kurdistan has been training to mount such an attack in hopes of weakening the regime, as James Vizina reports.
It could lead to yet another escalation in the war. Kurds are believed to have thousands of trained fighters, many of whom are in neighbouring Iraq. And several sources have said that their forces are getting ready for a military operation in Iran.
We have prepared all war scenarios, and regarding the current situation in Iran, we are ready to move in and play a leading role. Phone calls between Trump and the chairman of the Democratic Party have taken place. These are not just rumors.
The White House has denied reports that Donald Trump spoke about arming Kurdish forces.
He did speak to Kurdish leaders with respect to our base that we have in northern Iraq. But as for any report suggesting that the president has agreed to any such plan is completely false and should not be written.
The Kurds community is spread across Iraq, Iran, Syria and Turkey. They have long sought an autonomous Kurdistan state. But an uprising could further jeopardise hopes of an end to the war soon. The Iraqi Kurdish region has suffered several drone and missile attacks by Iran in recent days, some of which have targeted US military bases, as well as opposition groups' headquarters.
Well, for more, we're joined now by former diplomat Peter Galbraith, who previously acted as an advisor to the Kurdistan Regional Government in northern Iraq. Thanks so much, Peter, for being with us on the programme. Iran tonight, as we speak, denying reports that armed Kurdish militants are actually crossing into the country from Iraq. Whether or not that's happening right now, as we saw there in that report, there has been, a lot of talk about perhaps this is something that the Kurdish militia are planning. If that's the case, what's their main objective here, and would it be likely to be successful in your view?
Well, their objective would be to take control of the Kurdish areas along the Iraqi border. And no, these Iranian Kurdish militia, or Peshmerga as they call them, do not have the capability to take control. What could happen is what happened in Iraq in 1991, which is that with the regime under the government in Tehran under severe pressure, then there could be an uprising. And at that point, then these Kurdish political parties and their Peshmerga could enter and take control of the situation. In 1991, in Iraqi Kurdistan, after Saddam was defeated in the Gulf War, there was an uprising. And at that point, then the Kurdish leaders and their militaries came in. The Iranian Kurds, though, don't have the same military capability that the Iraqi Kurds had then, and certainly not what they have now.
Would any such operation then require significant, we would imagine, US military and intelligence support? And do you think the US has been providing that, perhaps in the form of the CIA?
Well, I don't know what the CIA is doing, but the notion of arming these groups seems kind of pointless because they're already armed and the whole area is awash with arms. So I don't know what additional weaponry might be provided. I suppose some high-tech communication systems and that sort of thing. And, these Kurdish parties have probably more intelligence than the CIA has. They have family members and they have supporters in all of these Kurdish cities and towns. But what they need to bear in mind is the history of America's involvement with the Kurds. In 50 years, the U.S. has used the Kurds, the Iraqi Kurds, the Syrian Kurds, on multiple occasions. And when they no longer need them, they've betrayed them. And I know the Iraqi Kurdish leaders are very much aware of this. and it's something the Iranian Kurds might want to consider.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you, in light of that, and we refer particularly to the situation during the war in Iraq, have shifting allegiances then and ideologies, have they strained ties with Washington?
Well, it isn't shifting allegiances. It is simply that the United States has used the Kurds as allies and then not stood by them. And Donald Trump has been a serial betrayer of the Kurds. In 2017, he actually allowed Qasem Soleimani and Abu Mahdi Muhandis to use American Abrams tanks to attack the Kurds in the city of Kirkuk after the independence referendum and take it. In 2019, he had a conversation with Erdogan just after the Syrian Kurds had defeated the Islamic State, and he gave the green light to Erdogan to attack the Kurds, which he did. And this year in Syria, he facilitated the Syrian government, headed by a person who a year ago had a $10 million bounty on his head for being a terrorist, to attack the Kurds. So the notion that the Iranian Kurds could trust anything that the Americans said, and particularly Donald Trump, I think that would be pretty reckless. And certainly the Iraqi Kurds, who have an even longer history of this kind of behavior from the Americans, going back to Henry Kissinger in 1975, I'm sure their counsel would be for caution.
And Peter, you mentioned a potential armed uprising earlier. What kind of consequences would that have if this were to be what ultimately happens here? What would the consequences be for Iran's overall stability, given the current situation?
I referred to a popular uprising, rather than an armed uprising, although presumably there'd be plenty of armed people who would be part of it. I don't think it would be, and this is another flaw with any strategy that involves supporting the Iranian Kurds, I don't think it would be exceptionally destabilizing, because the Kurdish areas are far from Tehran. So it isn't going to affect who's going to control Tehran. And the likely long-term outcome is either the current government or in Tehran consolidates and then uses military force to put down the Kurdish areas, as both the Shah did and the Islamic State, and with great brutality and many killed. Or there's a change of regime, and the new Iranian government comes in and puts down the Kurdish rebellion. The one hope I think the Kurds would have would be a common political agenda with a new government in Tehran, which would meet some of their demands, which are for democracy in Iran and for autonomy or federalism for the Kurdish region.
An awful lot of moving parts, as you suggest, Peter. Is it possible to talk about how such an operation by Kurdish militia, how would it be viewed then or received by other countries in the region?
Well, of course, Iran has warned against it, and it has threatened the leaders of Iraqi Kurdistan if they participate or permit it. And I'm sure the Iraqi Kurds will not participate in it. They aren't really in a position to prevent it, because first they need American support, because they're in a tenuous situation, and also they don't control the border with Iran. There are large segments of it's very mountainous. I've been up all along it. That basically the Kurdistan government doesn't control. Turkey has very explicitly warned against this. They're concerned that one of the groups, the PJAK, is linked to the PKK. So they're very much against it. And while they actually have very good relations with the Kurdistan region in Iraq, much better than they do with Baghdad, they're not eager to see another Kurdish region in the Iranian territory.
And a little bit more widely speaking, Peter, where do you think all of this is likely to go? We're hearing this evening that Washington now suggesting that this conflict could last at least 8 weeks. Just a day ago, Donald Trump was talking about this, continuing for 4 or 5 weeks. Where are things heading, do you think?
Well, I think the very first thing that anybody needs to understand about war is that it almost never turns out the way its architects intend. Think back to George W. Bush landing on the USS Lincoln on May 1st, 2003, after the invasion of Iraq, with that big banner, mission accomplished. And what is it? Almost 23 years later, the United States is still militarily involved in Iraq. This war, and Iran, of course, is a country 3 or 4 times the size of Iraq, both by territory and by population. This is not going to be over in 4 weeks. It's not going to be over in 8 weeks. This is going to continue. It's going to have devastating consequences for the global economy, for the American economy. It's not that, the U.S. can take out the Iranian Navy, and I suppose mostly has, but the insurance rates on oil tankers have gone through the roof. Nobody's going to be sending oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz when they can be taken out by a drone that costs a few $1,000s. Qatar has already closed down its natural gas facilities, and that's the largest or second largest producer of LNG, because again, a drone that costs a few $1,000s can blow the whole thing up. Natural gas is a very flammable thing. So you're going to have that impact. You're going to have the impact of the great damage to the economies of the Gulf countries. It's going to there would be inflationary in the United States and around the world. This is going to last a very long time, and it's certainly not going to end the way its architects intended. Ultimately, there could be regime change in Iran, because the Iranian people clearly do not like the government they have. And Iran is not such a repressive state that it's not North Korea, and people speak freely there, and you have these demonstrations.
We'll have to, I'm very sorry for cutting across you, but we will have to leave it there for now. We do really appreciate your time, though. That is former diplomat Peter Galbraith, previously acted as an advisor to the Kurdistan Regional Government. Thanks so much.